Welcome back to another Ways episode. My name's Mohammed. I'm here with Osama. Osama, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm doing well. We have an amazing guest today. Someone who I've been watching his comedy videos for the past 4 years now. Amer Zahr, author, comedian, professor, founder of 1001 Comedy in Ramallah and Detroit, I believe. Welcome, brother. So glad to have you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
I was actually, I guess to start, I was watching something I related to so much. I was watching your documentary, We're Not White. And I
Yeah.
couldn't relate to it so much because each time I apply to a job, it says like, "Are you white, Middle East, like white, black, Latino?" And like my name was Osama, so when I feel like putting white, I'm like, I'm I can only imagine the person on the other side looking at me is like, "Nah, there's no way Osama's white."
Yeah, I mean, we're not white. I mean, we're obviously not treated as white in any way. And, the way this happened is that America, well, I don't know if you guys know this, but, America has kind of like a racist past. I don't know if you knew that or not, but, there's been a little bit of racism in the history of America. And, for the longest time, from 1790 until 1952, you had to be white in order to become an American citizen. That was the law. And so a lot of different groups tried to get it. And, Chinese, Japanese, natives, Indians. But Arabs tried. And since we're only just like a little, they were mostly from Syria and Lebanon. So mostly they're just like a little off white,
Yeah,
and they were almost all Christian that were coming at that time. So they were able to get the designation of whiteness. But then when Arab Muslims showed up a few years later, they told them you're not white. So anyway, this country's a little racist. So that's how we got it, and we've been stuck with it since
but did
then.
it like the one thing that surprised me the most in that documentary is like when you were asking like I guess university students or people, it's like can you name a black celebrity? Can you name a Asian celebrity?
Right.
And our Arabic celebrity. In my head, I'm like, I kind of got offended because I'm like, around 2017, like, I could have named so many people. And one, I guess everybody, like, for music, DJ Khaled was that guy who was like, oh, like another one, another one. I'm like, you couldn't name one?
Well, so those interviews on the streets in that movie were done in
Oh,
2013.
really?
But even in 2013, I think DJ Khaled was a thing.
Yeah.
But look, I bet you if you asked a lot of people, they might not, still today, might not even know that DJ Khaled is Arab.
Yeah.
You know, they might think he's mixed. They might think I don't know what they think, but he doesn't go around saying it.
No,
So,
he doesn't promote it.
they might not think he's Arab. But I mean, that was the whole point of that thing. If you ask people to name a famous black person, boom, no problem. Ask people to name a famous Latino. Ask people even to name a famous Asian person, it's no problem. And then when it comes to us, as you saw in the documentary, people just started going, they didn't know what to say because they didn't want to say something bad. They were thinking of famous Arabs,
Yeah.
but it wasn't good.
No, it
It
wasn't.
wasn't good. So and so people still don't know. And that's part of the idea of not having a box is that when you don't have a box, you are not seen as part of like the fabric of American society. So people don't even see Arabs as Americans. They just see us as perpetually foreign. And that's, a big problem.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that.
It's actually pretty funny you said that as you're talking about the box and not fitting and not being part of like the nation as far as the United States overall. But for yourself, obviously, as we know, like you're a law professor, political activist, comedian, author. You're in so much various aspects and fields. Number one, growing up, did you ever imagine that you'd be this kind of person to be so diverse in the different things that you do? And also following that, like, what made you tell yourself like not to limit yourself as far as just being only a professor, only being a comedian, like only being a political activist? Like, what made you decide to just open up and stand in so much different spots and aspects of your life?
Well, I mean, first, I appreciate that. I am, I guess Arabs and Palestinians especially were just like entrepreneurial, like they just always want to do more,
For true.
do something. No one is stuck with one identity or one profession. Even like if somebody becomes a doctor, they eventually like open up a restaurant or something like just something about always doing something else.
Yeah.
And for me, I was in law school and I started doing comedy sort of as a hobby. And then I started liking it and I started doing it more. And I realized this could be a good way to tell stories and tell either the Arab American story or the Palestinian American story. And I just stuck with it. And when I graduated law school, I said, let me try this thing. And if I fail, I'll go become a lawyer. And, I've never had to go become a lawyer. And I started teaching. I'm an adjunct professor, so I teach part time. I started teaching in 2015, and I teach specifically about the stuff that I was doing comedy about, which is we're not white. That's what I teach, because there's a whole legal history to that. So my comedy and my legal my law professor career are completely connected to each other. They're not separate from each other. So I consider myself an activist first, and there's different tools I use to try to implement that activism. But first, I'm an activist.
I could say, like, watching your comedies, like, obviously there's a lot of funny jokes, but I feel like you also try to, like, educate people while they're listening. And that's one thing I love about it, is like that you're educating people, because there's a lot of comedians who are educating. I think you do it in a way where it's just like you are sending a message. Like, a lot of people are gonna go home. It's like, wow, I didn't think about that. Even I was watching your live that you had recently. There's so stubborn man. He was talking about Palestinians they don't have a country. And I guess me being Palestinian as well, I can be subjective. We can all be subjective. Like, you want to like start saying harsh words, but I saw how you were like rebuttaling his points, and you were saying like actual facts, and he was just being ignorant. I think at that point you just have to stop. It's like, nothing I say is gonna captivate this person or like intrigue you in a conversation.
Right. And look, sometimes when you're doing stuff on social media, you have to. Okay, so when I get on an Instagram live and some crazy Zionist or crazy person comes on and wants to start saying Palestinians aren't real or whatever the stupid stuff. Are we allowed to curse on this podcast? Yeah, you can
curse all you want.
Okay, whatever the stupid shit that they say. I mean, they just say a lot of bullshit, okay? So whatever the stupid shit that they say, I try to rebut it, but not for their sake. I'm not trying to convert them.
Yeah.
But there's an audience out there that's watching this or reading the comments or whatever. And so, it's more for the audience's sake. So you should always look, I always tell Arabs and Palestinians and Muslims too in America that just because you have a certain identity, by the way, doesn't mean that you're equipped to debate the other side.
Yeah.
Like, just because you're Muslim doesn't mean you know everything about Islam. Just because you're Palestinian doesn't mean you know everything about Palestine. Mm-hmm. So you got to really study and understand what you're talking about. And if you don't, then don't debate, because then you're going to get into trouble, and it's going to be bad for all of us. So not everyone is equipped to do that kind of stuff. And so, but you have to understand that if you do get into that, you're not doing it for that person. That person is already like a racist or an Islamophobe, or they want to deny who you are and all that kind of stuff. It is really about the audience, teaching maybe the audience how to deal with this kind of argument, or maybe educating somebody else in the audience about, why that argument is false. Mm-hmm. That's why you have to do it in a certain way, which is either funny or controlled or whatever, for the audience, not for them. Those people are lost, man. I mean, the people who say stuff like there's no Palestinian people and all this kind of stuff, it's like, I don't know, man. It's just the dumbest argument in the world. It's like, first of all, I actually, look, we call ourselves Palestinian, but, it doesn't matter really what you call us. I mean, either we were there or we weren't.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, either we were there and you kicked us out, or we weren't. And it doesn't matter if you call us Palestinians or Arabs or Martians or whatever the hell you want to call us. It doesn't really matter. We were there. I know we were there because I lived with the people who were there. Mm-hmm. Okay, like I listen to this story every day from my grandmother. And she couldn't keep up a lie for that long. Exactly. Like, she's not that smart. Like, she couldn't keep up a lie for that long. Okay? And so, that's why I always tell people, keep it simple, too. The other side tries to complicate it. Because they need to complicate it, because they're lying.
Yeah.
So, whenever you tell a lie, we've all lied before. Whenever you tell a lie to your mom or your girlfriend or whatever, all of a sudden you start to get really detailed, and you're like, well, you got to look at it from this point of view, and you got to like remember exactly what was happening and the context. And it's like, no, it's simple. Like, did you kiss that girl or not? Did you cheat on me or not? It's like real simple, And and it's the same thing with Palestine. You kicked us out, and you don't let us come back, and you stole our houses. It's like, it's not complicated. That's the only reason we're upset. We don't care that you're Jews. You could have been Jews. You could have been Muslims. You could have been Christians. It doesn't really matter to us. Yeah. You kicked us out and you don't let us come back. That's it.
Yeah, and it's your last post that you posted. I'm not sure if your last one of your last posts about Merry Palestinian Christmas. I sent that to all my friends who are like non-Arab. I'm like, here you go. Just some Merry Christmas to you guys. Because a lot of the time, a lot of my friends were like they'll joke around because obviously they know I'm Palestinian. But for me, I like educating them. I'm like, I'm like, where did you get your information from? It's Israel. Because my dad's born in Palestine. And I'm like, as you said, like he told me stories about like he remembers the 6 Day War that they had. He remembers like him getting kicked out of his own home. And I meant to send that to them because I'm like, go do your go do your research, because I'm like, even on a podcast, for example, like if you're gonna, like, as you said, when you're on live and you're talking to an audience, the last thing you want to do is lie on live, because people can easily go search stuff on Google. It's like, okay, now let me go search about Palestine. What's the real truth? Because obviously, I remember I read this beautiful quote, and it was like, if you watch the news, you're misinformed. If you don't watch the news, you're not informed. So I feel like in that sense, you have to go out of your way to like figure out what the truth is.
Well, especially with Christmas, like, Jesus is one of us. And it's so frustrating and annoying. First of all, the land was called Palestine at the time of Jesus. Historians have shown that. It was called other stuff too, by the way. It was called Canaan, it was called Israel, it was called the land of Judea and Samaria. Like, a lot of things have a lot of names. Like, Puff Daddy has like 7 names, okay?
Diddy,
all right?
Sean Combs, Puff Daddy.
Right. I mean, Diddy, Puffy, and he'll answer to any of them.
Yeah.
If he's on the other side of the room and you call him any one of those 7 things, he turns around.
Yeah.
Okay? So Palestine, the land, had many names, all right? And at the same time, and Palestine was one of them, and Jesus lived there. And so he's Palestinian, okay? He's other stuff too. They threw this argument, he can't be Palestinian, he was Jewish. You could be both, bro. I mean, I don't know what this thing, like, they're the side that thinks that Palestinian is the opposite of Jewish. It's not the opposite.
It's the same thing.
Okay? In some ways it's different, some ways they're similar, but it's not the opposite. In fact, there's always been people living in the land, and there's people still living in the land now, and they've descended from all the different kinds of people that have come through there, like Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, Jews, Arabs, Crusaders a couple times, Turks, Mongols, and so we look like, and the land was never empty. So all these people mixed over the years. So you know who's the descendant of Jews, among other things? Us, Palestinians. I mean, like, bro, this is not complicated. And, I always say everybody came to Palestine and everybody came in Palestine. So we look like everything.
Do you go to Palestine?
Was that joke too dirty for you guys to get? Everybody came to Palestine and everybody came in Palestine. You get it now? All right, you get it now, Muhammad? Okay, good.
I got it.
Muhammad didn't make a face. I thought it was like, all right, I don't know why he's like slowing down when he says that. Okay, now he gets it. So we look like everything. And then this shit that they do, which is so annoying, is that like Jesus didn't look like Brad Pitt. Okay, listen, white people are so obsessed with making Jesus white. Okay? He didn't look like Brad Pitt, all right? He didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. He wasn't from South Carolina, all right? He looked like DJ Khaled minus 100 pounds, all right? He looked like Osama, actually. I'm looking at Osama right now. That's what he looked like. Like, Jesus was much more likely to look like somebody named Mohammed than he was to look like somebody named Brad. That's just the reality. And what's so annoying is that now, especially during Christmas, all these TV specials are going to come on TV. What did Jesus look like? We need to know. What did Jesus look? Let me tell you something, bro. Okay, listen. Have you ever heard of Confucius? Confucius was a Chinese philosopher in the 5th century BC. Nobody ever has a mystery special of what did Confucius look like, all right? He was Chinese. We know what Chinese people look like. Buddha lived in India in the 5th century BC. Nobody has a special of what did Buddha look like. He was Indian. We know what Indian people look like. But they have to have these things. What did Jesus look like? Bro, there is people living. We know where Jesus is from. There is people living there that have been living there since he was there. Just go and look at them, all right? That's what he looked like. But they want to make him white so bad. So bad they want to make him white. And when they make him brown, white people start freaking out. No, he was one of us. No, bro, okay? Listen, he didn't look like somebody named Brad or Chad or Todd or Megan or Brittany, all right? He looked like somebody named Mohammed or Osama or Jihad, all right? That's what he looked like. It's just so fucking annoying. Anyways, whatever.
One thing I wanted to ask you was, because in your TED Talk about We're Not White, you talk about 2 things, a cultural awakening and also a political awakening. And I kind of feel the same way as far as in the African community as well. But what would you say to those Arabs who are born in Canada, born in America or England, and they feel so attached to the identity of being an American, being Canadian. And obviously, their parents are immigrants, whether first, second generation, or second generation, and everything that they say, the way they eat and stuff, is not considered cool. I don't want to talk to my uncles all the time back home on WhatsApp and stuff. They don't really embrace it. What would you
Right.
say to those people who don't really identify with their lineage as far as where they're from and their roots back home?
Yeah, I always tell people, and like I said in that video, people ask us where we're from, and then they ask us where we're from. So, you're from somewhere and you're from somewhere. Look, when you have the sort of history of parents who are immigrants or refugees, and you live somewhere else than where they're from, that creates like multi-layered identities. And identity is complicated. And identity is not it's not nice and sort of, you can't just fragment it very easily. So identity, your different identities are like different colors of paint, okay? And then you throw them into one bucket and you mix it up. And once you mix it up, you can no longer separate the green paint from the yellow paint, from the blue paint, from the red paint, okay? Now that's all in there and it's all mixed together. So we are Arab and Palestinian and American all at the same time. You don't really separate those things. But we always have to hold on to where we came from because there's so much beautiful history and stories about that. But society, especially Western white society, can make you feel bad about that. Like, especially if you're Arab or Muslim, okay? I mean, because those things are seen as evil. Not just different, but evil. Like anti-American. I mean, I used to tell this joke. I say, if two white people are walking down the street and they see a couple black kids walking towards them, they cross the street because they think those black kids might steal their purse. But they cross the street when we're walking towards them because they think we might steal their freedom. And like, that's different. That's a different kind of fear. And that is something much more like embedded in American society. And so, I understand the struggle. And so we do have these cultural awakenings and political awakenings, I think, that your cultural awakening comes early. Like, you're different. Your dad speaks different. You eat different food. Your house smells different than the White House. You go to the White House and it smells like boiled hot dogs. And you go to your house and it smells like, all these 75 different spices that your mom has in the thing, And so, but you still think you might fit in, but then there's a political awakening that comes for Arabs, especially if they can be white passing like me, or be mistaken for something else. The political awakening comes later when something political happens. For me, I was in the 7th grade and I was running for class president, and then America bombed Iraq. And somebody wrote on my face on one of my posters, "Go home, terrorist." Okay? And that's when I knew that I was different in a different way than I thought I was different.
Mm-hmm.
And it hits you in a different way. And I think every Arab American or Arab Canadian or whatever goes through that, where you always know you're different, but then it hits you in a different way. And that can either turn you into like what you described, sort of like running away from that and saying, hey, let me not deal with that problem.
Yeah.
I'll let people call me Sam or Mo or whatever, and I won't deal with that problem. Or it leads you into like embracing it much more and becoming sort of your own little activist in your own way and saying, no, I am this thing. And, let me tell you more about it. And luckily, I think we see a lot more of the latter than the former. But yeah, that's what I mean when I'm talking about that, this cultural awakening and a political awakening, is that being Arab or Muslim in America, it's a lot like being black. But for black people, they can never escape being black. So the cultural awakening and the political awakening might come at the same time. Like, I mean, even if you're 5, you might, and you're black, I mean, I don't know, but I mean, even if you're 5 and you're black, you might understand like racism. Like, these people don't like me, But if you're Arab, especially if you can get away with it, it might come later,
Yeah.
So those things are much more separated from
I'd
each
have
other.
to agree with that because even me, like my name is Osama, and obviously around 9/11, I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I'm pretty like I consider myself whitewashed Arab. Like I watch hockey, I watch like football, American football, all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, when I look back at it, I'm like, there's still certain things about me that I'm like, I don't consider myself white. Like, these guys want to do certain things, I'm not going to do that. And I feel like there is a huge differentiator, because even though I remember, like, the day before 9/11, friends, day after, I was getting called names. I'm like, and I remember the school asked me, they're like, do you want to change your name to Sam? And I told them, no, I'm not going to change my name to Sam. I'm like, am I about to sell up my identity?
Well, I mean, we all had this terrible experience. You know, when 9/11 happened, I was 24, 2001, 24, and I was a grad student at the University of Michigan, and my mom called me, and she said, "Don't go outside."
Yeah,
She said, "Don't go outside." She said, "I know you have a bumper sticker on your car about Palestine. Take it off." Like, that was the kind of stuff she was saying to me, you know, and that's the equivalent in some ways. I mean, no two things are the same, but we all hear about, you know, black parents having conversations with their kids on how to deal with the police, you know, because they know no matter how nice you are, something bad could really happen. You know, it was the equivalent of that, you know, and so that happens to us. Where are you guys located, by the way?
We're like a city outside of Toronto. Like, I'm not sure if you heard of Oakville. It's like outside of Mississauga.
So you guys are Canadian.
Yeah.
See, I was just in Canada a couple days ago. I had a show in
Guelph, right?
How do you say that?
Guelph.
Guelph. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm American, bro. All right. Listen, I'm American. We don't have these. You know, we only. You know, U and an E. If you put a U and an E next to each other in America, that's just a U. Okay. You guys spell shit wrong. You know, spell Walmart Supercenter RE. That's not how you spell it. Okay. All right. But you know. Canadians, you're so nice. I mean, just so weird. I come from the East Coast, okay, bro? People were not that nice. You guys are so nice. Yeah. And let me tell you the problem with Canada, all right? It's too nice. So I travel a lot. And whenever I travel somewhere, you know, I'm alone, so I want to go eat somewhere. So I pick up my phone and I like look for restaurants. And the way I always judge a restaurant from the beginning, if you're in a new city and you look on Google for restaurants, what's the first way you judge a restaurant?
Like reviews?
The amount of stars it has?
Exactly. The amount of stars it has. Thank you, Muhammad. That's the right answer. The amount of stars it has. And so what do? I look at the star. The problem with you guys in Canada, okay, is that you're too nice. And every place has like 4.5 stars, okay? Every place,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's true.
Every place gets great ratings, and so you don't really know what's good and what's not good. So I was in Edmonton, and I wanted to eat Chinese food, so I was looking at the Chinese place has like 4.5, and I didn't read the reviews. The problem is if you're in Canada, my advice to everybody in Canada, if you're looking at the Google reviews, read the review. Don't just look at the numbers. Read the reviews. Because some of the reviews are like, this food is very good, eh? This food is delicious, eh? And then you get down to one review and it's like, they messed up my order, but they said they were sorry. 5 stars. Like, why? Why do you get 5 stars?
You know what's funny about that?
We're really forgiving.
No, listen, I'm honest. Like, one time we were in Ottawa, maybe a couple months ago, before this gentleman got married. And
Mabruk.
Thank you so much. I remember we were in downtown Ottawa, and I remember I'm gonna expose you, Mo. He paid $25 for French toast. I'm like, buddy.
It wasn't $25. It was $19.
No,
it was terrible. It was.
So in my head,
yeah,
I'm honest.
And the reviews was only 4.2
yeah,
stars.
And then our buddy's Egyptian. He's like, oh, like, obviously speaking in his Egyptian Arabic dialect. I'm like, oh, is Vegas gonna be amazing? I'm like, listen, I'm really like judgmental about my food. I didn't order anything, so in front of the waitress, I'm like, this looks disgusting.
Yeah. It wasn't even French toast. It was literally like 4 pieces of bread.
For me,
and she just had it stacked.
I'm not gonna lie.
I was like, yeah,
Americans have the best food. Like, each time I'm down in the States, I know I'm gonna have a good time because food is cheap and food tastes a lot better. It tastes a lot better than it does here.
Listen, that's why America's great. Everything's cheap. You know, no one's ever gonna go hungry in America. I mean, America is the only place in the world where poor people are fat. Okay, I've been to a lot of places in the world. And the poor people are skinny. In America, the poor people are fat. That's why there's not going to be a revolution, okay? The poor people are fat. But yeah, that's what you got to do in Canada. You got to be careful with the stars and the reviews. You have to, I think there has to be like a 1-star handicap. Like any restaurant in Canada, you just got to immediately -1 star from the rating if you really want to understand what the place is.
If you're coming to Toronto anytime soon or like within the next year, the best places are in the high crime areas. That's where the best food is. Like honestly speaking.
Always. Those neighborhoods have the best spots.
If I come there, you got to take me. I was in Mississauga, a couple days ago, and Mississauga. I live in Dearborn already, which is like the Arab American capital. Okay, we have the best food here.
Best Lebanese food.
And Mississauga is like little mini Dearborn. You guys got a lot of nice Arabic stuff there. And I had a shawarma in a place was really good, and I had some menaish in a place that was, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, but I come from here, but I feel bad for the Arabs that moved to Mississauga like 30 years ago, because that's not easy to say. If you're like if English is your second language, it is not easy to say Mississauga. I don't even know what they did when they called back home to their, hey, did you arrive to Canada? Yes. Where are you? Mrs. Toronto. They just end up saying Toronto, But I mean, it's beautiful. It's very nice, and everyone's very nice, and it's just kind of weird, and you don't know how to deal with people.
Yeah, Canadians.
It's bizarre.
Well, to go back to
to be honest,
go Mo.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Because obviously, when 9/11 happened, as we all know, it changed the world forever, especially for Muslims, and especially Arabs for sure. And you just had like a rephasing, a reimagining of Americans' ideology perspective on Arabs overall, and then you saw the mistreatment up to this day. Obviously, the fact that you're able to travel as a comedian, political activist, and you're able to go to different countries, meet so much different groups and cultures, and I think you said in one of your interviews, like the fact that you're able to travel is just like you have a perception about a place, and when you get there, it's like, oh my God, it's just like a Walmart and a McDonald's everywhere, right? What is the benefit of traveling, and why do you think more people should travel?
Well, look, I mean, the benefit of traveling well, if you're inside America, I'll be honest, there's not that much benefit other than you get a lot of miles and you get upgraded, when you fly. Because yes, a lot of America's very cookie cutter. All right. I mean, there's a lot of parts of America that are beautiful, obviously, but you go I grew up on the East Coast, and you think like, Kentucky and Tennessee are like, backwoods places. And then you go to Louisville, Kentucky, and it, looks just like the suburb that you grew up in, but traveling around the world is very, very important. I mean, it is the antidote to a lot of ignorance, and it is so powerful. Even inside the Arab world, there's so many different cultures inside the Arab world. We're all Arabs, and we're connected by language, and that's a very extremely powerful connection that we have. It creates a shared culture and politics, but we have many subcultures within that, right? We have Gulf Arabs, we have Shami Arabs, the Egyptians, you got Afro Arabs, we got everything. And people don't understand the diversity. People don't understand, for instance, that 2/3 of the Arab world is in Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, 2/3 of the population of the Arab world is in Africa. The largest Arab nations are African, and and tens of millions of Arabs are black. So we have such a diverse, beautiful thing. You gotta learn all that stuff and visit all that stuff. And I've been to many of it, but not all of it. But yeah, travel, and especially going to Palestine. I always tell people you gotta go to Palestine because you just have to go see the resilience of our people for yourself. Like how they are not being, they are not willing to stop. So in the summer, in June, I went to Jerusalem and I went to Sheikh Jarrah. And I sat with the people in Sheikh Jarrah. And what's so beautiful down there is that what they do basically, so they're living in this neighborhood where settlers are literally coming in and stealing their houses. And literally, it's like, I know for some people the Palestinian story sounds so crazy. Like how is this real? Like, because we tell people, like, they came in and they kicked us out and they moved into our houses and we didn't get to take anything, and the coffee was still on the fire, and people are like, come on. And we're like, no, that shit actually, sounds crazy, yeah. Right? But it actually happened. And in Sheikh Jarrah, they're doing the same thing. But what they do, their form of resistance is basically they get chairs, they come out onto the sidewalk, and they just sit there. And they're just like, hey, bro, we're here. We're not going anywhere. Very simple. We're not going to go hide in our houses. We're here. and they have dinner out there all together. And when it was Ramadan, they would have iftar there, all on the street together. And they don't harass anybody. They're just sitting there. So I went there in June to just sit there. And I sat there with them and we spoke. And it was really amazing. And as I was sitting there, I was sitting in front of the house of the Kurd house, Muna and Mohammed al-Kurd, sitting with their dad, Nabil, great guy. And we're just sitting there talking. And then all of a sudden, out walked Yaakov. You know Yaakov,
Yeah.
right? Yaakov, the guy on the video that said, if I don't steal it, somebody else will steal it. Oh my God. I love this guy. I mean, this guy is like the best thing to happen to us, all right? I mean, we've been saying this shit for like 73 years. It shows you how powerful, like, oppressors are, like how powerful it is when white people say something. You know, like black people have been saying, this shit's been happening to us for a long time. And then when a white person says it, all of a sudden everybody believes it, you know? And we Palestinians have been saying, this shit's been happening to us for a long time. And all of a sudden Yaakov said it, and it was like, it made international news. And so he walked out, and I was like, I felt like I was seeing a celebrity, okay? I mean, I call him Justin Bieber, okay? Like, he's I felt like I was seeing a celebrity, and I immediately took out my phone, and I started recording him, and I said, Yaakov! And he said, yeah? I said, thank you! Thank you! And he's like, for what? I was like, just for being you, bro. Just thank you for being you. You have helped us so much. That's why we Palestinians are always like, look, if the truth comes out, we're cool with that. But they're not cool with the truth coming out. They try to shut down my Instagram, my Twitter. All I'm doing is telling the truth. They try to shut us down because they can't have a debate about the truth.
Yeah, which is kind of ironic, by the way, because I remember, to add on to your point about Instagram, I posted 3 stories. One of them was about like some quote. The second was about Palestine. The third was about one of my friends promoted his account. And the first story had 300 views. The second story had 100 views. The Palestinian story had 20 views. I'm like, how is this possible?
Right. No, this is what they do to us, and they are so scared to talk about it because, look, first of all, they've been using the same arguments for like 70 years. Okay, same old arguments. You guys didn't exist. You left on your own. Remember, every Zionist argument can be responded to in one of 2 ways. Either that's a lie, or that doesn't matter. Okay? 1 second. I need to sneeze. Man, that was good. All right, so remember, they're lying. You know, we've been hearing these stories from our grandmothers and our grandfathers forever. And whoo, that was another one. I'm muting for the listeners. I don't know if you're going to edit that.
Yeah, I know.
For the listeners.
No, they can't hear it. They can't hear it at
okay.
all.
You know, my grandmother came to live with us in Philadelphia because my dad and my mom and me, we came from Jordan, and then my aunt came to America, and then my grandfather died, so my grandmother was alone. And as we know, we Arabs, we don't leave our old people alone. You know, they come live with us, you know, until they die, and we put their picture on the wall. You know, like that's the way we do it. And so she lived with us, and she used to tell us the same story every day. Me and my brother would go up to her room, and she liked to watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy for some reason. She couldn't speak English very well, but she loved to watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. Okay? And we would go to her room, and she would tell us the same story every night. And we'd go there because she would give us these little Debbie snacks, these little cakes that my mom would never buy for us, okay? She bought them, and she would give them to us. And it was the same story every night. She used to tell us about 1948, and she lived in Jaffa, which is now Tel Aviv. And she would say, in Arabic, she said, "Alulna btirja'u ba'd usbu'ain." Said they told us we could come back after 2 weeks. And then she said in Arabic, "Ubadna am nistanna fihum." And we're still waiting on these 2 weeks. Okay, this kind of like pain that she had, she felt that it was important not to hold it in, but to tell that story every day to her grandchildren. That was important to her. And that's the kind of life that Palestinians live. They said the old would die and the young would forget. That's what they said. But they didn't know that Arab ladies like to talk, all right? And they like to tell stories, and they don't stop,
That's so
okay? And that's exactly the case with my grandmother. And she told us that same story every day. So we didn't forget. First of all, there's some of the old ones still walking around that'll tell you the stories. And we didn't forget. I mean, you can find a 10-year-old kid in Mississauga or Dearborn or New York or Australia that will tell you the name of the village that his grandparents got kicked out of 73 years ago. So we've been telling these stories. I know I'm not the only one that heard that story from his grandmother. So it's so powerful, you know, who we are. And Palestine is so powerful. Like, sometimes we think we're weak, but just look at the American Congress. So 4 years ago, there was no Palestinian in Congress. Okay?
Yeah.
Then we elected one out of 435. Just one. And also elected Ilhan Omar, who's great on Palestine as well. So we got 2 people there. 2 out of 435 Congress people. 2. And AIPAC and every pro-Israel group went crazy. They've had to change their whole strategy. They're starting to have conference calls about 2 people. See, that's how powerful we are. Only 2 of us can change the whole strategy of a $100 million organization.
Yeah.
Imagine if there was 5 or 10, right? But if only 2 were able to change everything, that shows how powerful the truth is. Because if those 2 people were lying, then you wouldn't spend resources on trying to silence them.
For sure.
But they're telling the truth. And this freaks out Israel and Zionists. They don't know how to deal with it. So I always tell all Palestinians, all Arabs, all Muslims, understand how powerful the truth is. If the truth is even just one person out of 435, it makes a huge impact. And we see that.
Agreed, because even like as you said, like even on Instagram, when they're demonetizing your posts about Palestine, they don't want the truth to be told.
Right. It's crazy, man.
I know we're kind of short on time, but I do have there's 2 people, I guess fans of yours, that wanted to ask you questions and would love to ask them for you.
Okay.
One of them is, hold on. One of them comes from Dania.
Fun fact. Sorry, before you continue, when Osama was talking about how like he grew up like in the whitewash and everything, one thing he didn't tell you was he actually loves Garth Brooks. He's a big Garth Brooks fan.
Such a lie.
So that's one thing I want to let you know.
I mean, look, I would like you to walk up to Garth Brooks one day, Osama, and tell him, listen, my name is Osama, and I'm one of your biggest fans. And then say to him, Garth, do you think I'm white?
The answer is no.
And I'm sure the answer will be no. You know?
That is,
So if Garth Brooks doesn't think you're white, then you're not white.
that's funny, Mo.
At least in Canada, you guys have a box. I mean, Canada Arabs have a box. But in
honestly,
America, we don't.
I guess before I ask the questions, because as I said before, like earlier in the podcast, sometimes I apply to jobs, like it always asks. To me, it kind of pisses me off that you even ask me where I'm coming from. Sometimes like, I'm just like my name could tell so much about me. I think your name could tell so much about you. And I'm like, when you're saying white, I'm like, yeah, I watch hockey, but I'm not white at any sort. And sometimes I feel like when they're doing the interview with me, they're like, ooh, you lied. This question comes from Dania.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it.
Sorry, we're saying?
Listen, I mean, white people don't think we're white.
No, they don't.
I said white people don't think we're white.
No, absolutely.
And that's all that matters. I mean, white people have been the ones who have been making up these categories for such a long time, and they don't think we're white. So that's all that really matters. Okay, question from Dania. Go ahead.
Dania, she asks, do you have any tips for someone that's interested in playing the oud? Also, she also says that your cover of Sawah is hilarious, and if you're planning, are you planning on performing in Toronto?
Yeah, so I do plan on coming to Toronto. Hopefully, in the next few months, I'll come do a show there, a nice big show. If you want to play the oud, which is Arabic pear-shaped guitar for people who don't know, I'm trying to see. I used to have like a little statue of a oud. I don't know where it is, but in any case, Look, if you play another instrument, then it might be okay to learn. If you've never played an instrument before, it's going to be very, very hard. And first, I encourage people to just like learn, train their ear, like on the piano or something. Go buy a little keyboard from the store for $30 and just start to train your ear that you can even hear notes. Okay, because the oud is a very complicated instrument, but it's the basis of all Arabic music. So, Dania, I don't know. Dania, DM me and I'll give you some oud lessons. How about that?
There you go, Daniel. DM.
I thought the question was going to be, are you single? The answer is yes.
The second question actually comes from someone named Jumana. She actually asked you, how do you challenge narratives through comedy? Is it strategic humor effective for Israel's diplomacy, or do most people find it unfunny?
No, it is very effective. I mean, look, when you can make somebody laugh, they listen to you. You know, it sort of breaks down any sort of barriers, and especially if you're going to talk about like a deep, complicated subject. And by the way, pain has a lot of comedy, right? I mean, like we've all seen somebody laugh so much they start crying, but you can also see somebody cry so much they start laughing. So these things are connected to each other somehow. And so comedy is one of these things that breaks down sort of any barrier of awkwardness. Mm-hmm. Everybody uses it. I mean, like if you're about to go walk into a really boring business meeting, the guy who is doing the business meeting might try to break the ice with a joke. Now, it might not be funny, but he's trying to do it in order to sort of like, okay, let's break down these walls before we get into this hour of a boring business meeting. Yeah. With comedy is about, real stand-up comedy is about sort of conveying your point of view of the world through humor, or pointing out the ridiculousness and hypocrisy in life through humor, right? That's what Dave Chappelle does. That's what Richard Pryor did. That's what George Carlin did. That's what Bill Burr does. You know, those kinds of comedians are my kinds of comedians, the ones that talk about something, talk about social stuff. And so what we have with Palestine is that it's a very, we think it's simple, but for a lot of other people, it's a very delicate subject. And so you have to use humor to convey it. And then when Palestinians come to my shows, it's like therapy, right? I mean, it's like they're laughing because they're living this thing. And other people are maybe laughing because they're learning this thing. Mm-hmm. And that's really sort of powerful to have that connection. Because a comedy show is like a shared experience, you know? A comedy show is like, you know, like if you're all, if imagine you're on a plane, you know, you ever been on a plane and then it takes like a dip, right? You think for like 2 seconds you're going to die and then everything's okay. Yeah. And then everyone starts looking at each other, right? Like, oh my God, we all just shared that moment of like, we were all going to die. That's what a comedy show is like, all right? Everybody's in the room and they're sharing this experience, and it's very important and powerful. And so comedy can be very, very effective in that way of conveying emotions. But still, you know, I still say my first job on stage is to be funny. And if while I'm funny, I can put in some of those things, great. But I got to be funny. If you're not funny, then it just turns into a lecture, and nobody wants to listen to a lecture.
Unless you're in school, then.
Unless you're paying for it, yeah.
Exactly.
Of course. I guess, I don't know, one like quick question. I think my last question for you is,
yeah,
being a comedian, obviously, like you said, it's an art. Everything that comes with it, subjective. It's on you as a comedian to prove your perspective through the humor, obviously, right? Yeah. And the cool thing about comedy is the sense of control. You have an audience they're there to listen to, and you have to command the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, obviously, as a professor, the same thing. You have students, and you're supposed to teach them a subject over a period of time. What have you learned as far as the art of control, and how you've been able to apply that in different fields, as far as in comedy and also in the university life as well?
Well, as a comedian, especially if you're a comedian in front of like an Arab or Muslim crowd, 90% of your job is crowd control, like just getting people to calm down and listen and not participate. You know, Arabs have this thing, they like to just participate. You know, they always like to yell out, you know, but a comedy show is like, I talk and you be quiet. You know, yeah. Those are the rules, you know, and you get to laugh, but they participate. Somebody always tells me, like, how do you deal with Arabs when they heckle you? Yeah. I'm like, well, they're not really heckling, because heckling is like from a bad intention. These people have good intentions, but they just want to participate too much because they, you know, Arabs and Muslims, I think, but Arabs especially, they have this disease that they look at you doing something and they think they can do it better. Like this is what they see somebody doing something and they go, oh, I can do this, no matter what it is, and so they want to start participating. So a lot of the art of comedy, stand-up comedy, is like, in the beginning, creating an environment where you let them know, okay, listen, I'm in charge, I have the microphone, but you can't say that, right? Yeah. You have to do it in a different way. I do it by immediately communicating with them to say, okay, what kind of people we got with us tonight? We got Arabs, we got Africans, we got white people, who do we got? And you start to get, and that's when you immediately let them know, okay, this is going to be a shared experience. You're all here together, and now I need you to sit and listen, and so, that kind of thing is something that I learned over time, though. I mean, I used to just get up and just start telling jokes, and then people start talking, and they start getting rowdy, and then you've lost all control. So, you really need to set that from the beginning. Same thing in the classroom. Look, in an academic way, an academic class is different, like, they're already sort of like scared of you, and they're afraid to talk. You gotta, that kind of thing is, you gotta create an environment where you tell everybody, look, it's okay for all of us to talk and even ask questions when we don't know the answers, So it's a different kind of environment that you have to create. But, I insert humor in my classroom too, but on stage I think of it like, okay, 80% of the time I got to be funny, and 20% of the time I can be teaching you something. In the classroom, it's the opposite. Like 80% of the time I got to be teaching you something, and 20% of the time I can be a little bit funny to help break the ice. Yeah. But I use humor in both.
I think for me, I guess it ended off for me because I talk about your comedy. And I didn't realize my parents do this until you said it. You're differentiating between like Lebanese people and Palestinian people. You're like how they use the word wow, and you said Palestinian people say mish wow. I'm like, I never paid attention. The same day I'm with my mom at the mall, bro, wallah, and then she's like, oh, I had the mish wow.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no way.
Listen, man. 73 years of occupation can fuck you up, so you become negative about everything. Exactly. Lebanese women, they love the word wow, and they're very positive about, wow, today you look so wow, your dress, wow. And Palestinian women, they've lived through a lot of tragedy, so. Yeah, a lot of, like, did you see her in the wedding? Yeah, mish wow. Mish ishi wow.
I thought it was a myth.
No, it ain't a myth.
But I want to thank you, Amer, for coming on. We enjoyed this conversation, having you on.
Thanks, guys. Man, listen, before you go, I want to say that the two of you, I'm proud of you for doing what you're doing and getting out there and being active and creating content and including our culture and our history and what you do. I'm proud of you guys.
I appreciate it. That means a lot. That means so much coming from you.
Thank you so much.
Before we let you go,
all right,
we would love to, if you want to share where the people can follow you.
Yeah. It's just my first and last name, Amer Zahr. At Amer Zahr, that's my Amer Zahr for white people. It's very simple. It's that's my handle on Instagram, Twitter. Go join my Facebook page too. I'm at like 200,000 people on Facebook. I want to get to 1 million. So let's all do that. Share it all everywhere. And don't forget, Jesus is Palestinian. Don't forget, when people are celebrating this Christmas, they are celebrating the birthday of a freedom-fighting, overachieving brown Palestinian. That is who they are celebrating the birthday of. Exactly. So to all of us, from all of us to all of you, Merry Palestinian Christmas.